Okay, good evening, everybody. So we're gonna continue learning the Gemarah Gittin. I tried to do a Zoom thing, but I don't think people know how to use a Zoom. I'll give it a. What time is it? Oh, it's 8:00. Okay, so let's learn. So we're holding in the Gemarah here, if you have the Gemarah Gittin, we're holding in the Gemarah, in the Masechta Gittin. Hello. Anybody here? David Marcus. Let's go. Are you there? You see me? Okay. If you want to do it I sent the link to be able to see each other on the Zoom. Anybody? I see one guy, David Marcus. Do you see me?
Yep, I'm here.
How come I don't see you?
Let me try that. Hold on.
How you doing?
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Okay, do you have the Gemarah? Do you have a Gemarah with you? No.
I don't have it with me, unfortunately. I'm gonna have to
You have to get a Gemarah. So you have to so we're holding the Gemarah. We're still in Masechta Gittin. We're holding the Gemarah. We're holding 7-2. 7-2A 7-2-7-8-2. The Gemarah. This is a Gemarah. So it's a Gemarah more of a Gadita, a little bit of a Gadita, which is the homiletic part of the Gemarah. Gemarah over here, we continuing from last week. The Gemarah over here continues with the concept of the teachings of making a wedding or making music, and the time after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, that we shouldn't really make music after the destruction of the temple, and the different things that the Chazal put on the Jews after the destruction of the temple that they shouldn't do. That they shouldn't do in their celebrations. You know, we break a cup to remember the destruction of the temple. So here the Gemarah says over here is as follows: Amar Reish Gelusa Ravuna. The head of the academy, the Reish Gelusa, said to Rav Huna, "Klila minallah the asa." How do you know that you're not allowed to wear a crown? There used to be a custom that the chassan and the kala would wear a crown. They would put a crown upon their heads for the wedding. They would wear this crown upon themselves at the wedding. A Malay. So how do we know that this is prohibited? After the destruction of the temple, it's prohibited to wear a crown, to put a crown upon your head. A Malay. So he said to him, the Ishkalusa said to him, "Midrabanan, this is a rabbinical prohibition. The rabbis prohibited from wearing this crown." Now we learned in the Mishnah, "Bepulmis shel Aspasianus," during the war with Vespasian, that Vespasian was one who destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, or came to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. Gazu ala taras chasanim. They decreed on the crowns of the bridegrooms, that they vala erus and a erus. There was two crowns. There was a crown of the bride. It was called a taras chasanim. There was this crown that they wore, and there was a crown of the groom. So they the time when Vespasian came to surround Yerushalayim, to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, they said, "Listen, we're in a very big tzara, and therefore we're going to ask that people shouldn't wear these crowns." So he said, so this was his answer This was an answer to Rav Huna. Adahachi kan Rav Huna lapunai. Rav Huna left. He got up and he left. He left the room. He had to go to the. He excused himself. He had to go to the restroom. Amalei Rav Chisda said to the Eish Gelusa, Kroksit. What do you mean? It's a pasuk. It's written in the pasuk. It says there's a verse that says, "Koya mar Hashem Elikim." This is what God says. Heisira hamitznefes ve'heidim ha'atara. Remove the turban. The mitznefes was the turban that the kohen wore. The kohen in his garments, he wore a mitznefes, right? He wore this turban like a hat. So he used to wear a hat. So the Torah says, when you're going to take, the prophet says, this is what God says, take off the hat and take off the crown. For will it not remain like this, that they exalt him that is low and base him that is high? So the Gemara answers, when you put the verse puts these two things together, what is the connection between a mitznefes, what the kohen wore, and atara, what the chsanim would wear? What's the connection? So it comes to tell you, as long as the mitznefes is on the top of the head of the kohen gadol, that means the Beis Hamikdash is standing. Atara b'reish kol adam, then the crown can be worn by every chassan. The stalak mitznefes, mireish kohen gadol. But when they took away the turban, the Churban Beis Hamikdash, so the mitznefes was taken away from the head of the kohen gadol, or the kohen. The stalak atara mireish kol adam, you take away the crown from the regular people. That's it. So this was, he said, it's a pasuk. So why do we need we need Rav Huna to give us a teaching? It's a pasuk, it's a verse. Adahachi asa Rav Huna. In the meantime, Rav Huna returned, came to the room. Ashka Yasi, he found him sitting and discussing the verse. Amalei, so Rav Huna told Rav Chisda, Lekim midrabanan. I'm telling you that we don't wear a crown is a rabbinical thing. Don't base it on a pasuk. If you're going to base it on a pasuk, you're gonna make it a Torah thing. It's not a Torah obligation. The Torah is talking about the kohen gadol taking off his hat and his crown. Don't mix the kohen gadol taking off his hat with us taking off the crown at the wedding. Don't do that. Elachizda shmach v'chizda me'elach. But you know what? Your name is Chizda, and I like it anyway. Chizda Shemach, Chizda means kindness. Chizda Shemach, your name is Chizda, and your teaching is kind. So therefore, even though I like your drasha, I like the way you expounded on the verse, but you cannot make it a Torah obligation. So therefore, it's only a rabbinical obligation that we don't do anything for the chassan. We don't wear these crowns. Ravina Ashkala Rashi. Ravina once came and saw Rav Ashi. He was weaving a wedding crown for his daughter. He was marrying off his daughter, and he was making this crown for her. Amalei. So Ravina said to him, "What do you mean? Don't the rabbis taught us? Hey, mitznefes ve'heidim atara. Didn't Bechizda teach us that when you take off the kohen gadol, took off his hat, we should take off our crowns?" Amalei, so he said, Avina said, you're right. But, Dumya the Kohen Gadol. You're right. The one who has to take out the crown is like the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol was a man. Ava ben Ishei, loy. The Kohen Gadol is a man. The men need to take off their crowns. They shouldn't wear any crowns at a simcha. But not a woman. I'm making a crown for my daughter and for the daughter. And that's why we see a lot of times that women do wear a crown. They make the bridal crown. And they wear these crowns at a chasana. So Ravina said a woman doesn't go into this category. It would be cute to see men in crowns by a wedding, but okay. So that Gemarah continues. My zois lois, the passage we learned before. Zois lois zois. This is not this, but we learned the teaching before. We're going to learn it in the meaning. The Gemara is going to explain what that means in a different way. Dara shlei Rav Avira. Zimin, the Rabbi Avida expounds on this, Zeus, loy Zeus, this, not this. It's a verse. So he says, Dara Shal Avida, Zimna Amalei Mishmei de Rav Asi. Zimna Amalei Mishmei de Rav Asi. One, sometimes it's said in the name of Rav Ami, and sometimes in the name of Rav Asi. When God told the Jewish people, we're going back to this pasuk, remove your turban and take off your crown, right? To remove your turban, take off your crown. So the angels said to God, this is the punishment fitting the Jewish people. Is this the right punishment? The Jewish people said when God gave them the Torah, they said, Nasa v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. Why would you punish them in such a way? Amalahen, God answers, Loi zois lahen Yisrael. Is this punishment not fitting Israel? So you'd ask me a question. See, you have to know you're Jewish when you answer a question with a question. Because God did the same thing. He said, you ask me a question, I'll ask you a better question. Is this, that's a Loi zois, zois loi zois. This is not this. So in essence, so that the angel said, Zeus, this is what you're doing to the Jewish people. And God answered the question with a question. He said, I shouldn't do this to the Jewish people. Who destined demeaned me, demeaned God. And they uplifted a lowly thing. They diminished me. And they uplifted this lowly thing of idol worship. And they put the Menashe, who was the king at that time, put a graven image of God in the temple. So God asked to answer the question with a question. You see, that's what we learn from God, that we can answer a question with a question, right? You ask a question, I'll ask you a better question. So the God asked him a better question. That means Zeus loy Zeus. You ask Zeus, this is your question, I'll ask you a better question. You ask me a question, why I punish the Jews that said Nas and Ishma. I'm going to ask you a question. Why would I not punish the Jews when I was in the holy temple and they threw me out and they put an idol in the temple? Okay. Rav Avida expounded. It said, Zimnan Amalei Mishpei de Rav Ami. Sometimes it's said in the name of Rav Ami. Zim Amalei Mishpei de Rav Asi. And sometimes it's said in the name of Rav Asi. My Dirsiv. It says a verse. This is the homiletic part of the Gemarah. I got it to Koyamar Hashem. This is what God says. Im shleimim v'chein rabim v'chein naguzu v'avar. Though they are united, and like wise many, even if they shall be shorn off, and it shall pass away. This is a verse in Nahum. At a little level, this verse refers to the enemies of Israel. God states that even if those enemies are anonymous in their resolve to attack Israel, and though they are numerous, He will thwart their plans. Avina offers a homiletic interpretation to this verse. Okay, so Kayam Hashem is Shleimim v'Merabim. Even if they're united and they're like many of them, they shall be sure. I will not allow them to accomplish what they want to accomplish. So he said as follows. Doesn't mean this. It means something else. He said the pasuk means if a person sees that his provision are measured exactly according to his needs, that means he finds that he has only enough money for what he needs. He doesn't have extra money to go on vacation. He doesn't have any extra money. He has mamish enough money to what he needs. What should he do? So you know what the Gemarah says? Here the Gemarah says that if you have enough exact money, what you need, and you want more money, right? Because you want money for things that you want, not what you need. So what do? Yasman tzedakah. He should give charity. He should give charity, even though he has just enough money for what he needs. That will give him more money. And especially if he has more money than he needs. So what's the trick of getting more money? Give to charity. Even though you're taking away from money for what you need, right? But God's going to give you for what you need and for more than you need. That's how Ravina learned this pasuk. That if they have enough or they need more, you learn the pasuk. If they are shleimim, they're complete. Does exactly what they need, and more than they need, then they should take from themselves. They should give away from themselves. Then the Gemara continues, and it starts to explain the further pasuk. V'chein nagoizu va'avar. They shall be shorn off and shall pass away. My v'chein nagoizu. What's the clause? They shall be shorn off and shall pass away. Shmuel learned what's the meaning of the end of that pasuk. Kol hagoizes. So this is the homiletic teaching. In the pasuk it means the enemies of the Jews, but this is the homiletic way of teaching the pasuk. Kol hagoynes menachasav va'ismen tzedakah. Whoever shears off from his possession and gives charity, nitzav medina shel Gehenim. He will be saved from the punishment of Gehenim. He'll be safe from the punishment of Gehenim. So that's not a beautiful thing. That he will be. That's another way to learn the pasuk. Not a beautiful way, homiletic way to learn the pasuk. The Eivisha says that if you're going to give tzedakah, I will save you from the Gehenim. What's the mashal? So he gives an analogy. An analogy of two sheep that were going through the water. Achas gezuza, v'achas eni gezuza. One of the sheep was shorn off. All his hair was taken off of him, and one of them was not shorn off. He was a sheep that was very fat, had a lot of his hair on it, his wool on it, right? Gezuza avra, the shorn off sheep, he passed by, right? He didn't drown. But the one who has a lot of wool on him, what happens? He gets full of water. He can't get over the river.
Right. Okay.
So the Gemara says, and that's the same thing over here. You want to get over. You want to get over to the other side. You want to get over to Gan Eden. The best thing is share a little less gashmis. Diminish your.
Take the weight off.
Get the weight off. Very good. Take the weight off. If you take the weight off, you'll be less packages. You won't have such a struggle to get over to the other side. And the pasuk continues, and I will afflict you. What does that mean in a homiletic way? So Amar Zutra. Even a person that's afflicted, God forbid he's poor, he should nevertheless give charity. Even your afflicted one, even one who's himself needs to give charity, should give charity. Should be a person that gives charity. So the Gemara continues. And then the pasuk continues. It says, "I will not afflict you anymore." So I'm telling you, Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef says, "What is the meaning of that?" Shuv if a person that is again a person that is poor, or a person that doesn't have money but gives anyway to charity, God will give him that he will take him out of his poorness. Is that the right word? Take him out of his tzaddis.
Poverty.
And they'll take him out of his poverty. That would be a better word. Take him out of his poverty, and we'll give him the capability not only to have for himself, but be able to give to others. And now we ended off right now the Agarata of the Gemarah. The Gemarah is now going to go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah talks about the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. The Mishnah over here talks about the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, if you remember. And the Mishnah says that what is considered part of Eretz Yisrael concerning Gittin over here. That if you bring a get, you bring a document from out of Israel, you have to say b'fani nechta, right? You have to say in front of me it was signed, in front of me it was written. And we learned the Gemarah, Rabba and Rava. The reason why, because the out of Eretz Yisrael not so smart, or the people are not available, and we want to validate the get. We want to validate the document here in Israel and make sure that it's validated. Then nobody else can come and argue with the document, right? So the Gemarah, I'm not going to go back to the Mishnah. I'm not going to go back to the Mishnah where the Mishnah says these different places. Merekem lemizrach, from Rekem eastward is considered out of Israel. Merekem kemizrach, and Rekem itself is like the east out of Israel. Me'ashkelon l'darim, from Ashkelon southward is considered out of Israel. But Ashkelon itself is like out of Israel. And it says Me'akoi, from the city of Akko to north, Me'akol Tzafin, from Akko north and north of Akko. So the Gemara, in essence, to the laws of Gittin, Akko would be the most northern part of Israel. And now the question is, Akko itself, is Akko part of Israel or is Akko out of Israel in these laws? In the laws of Gittin. So the Mishnah says Akko Kitzafin, Akko itself is like out of Israel. And our Meir says no, Akko is like Israel. So we have in the Mishnah we have the Machlekes. What is Akko? Is Akko out of Israel concerning these laws, or is Akko part of Israel concerning these laws? Okay, that's the Mishnah. So now the Gemarah, going back to the Gemarah. Now the Gemarah over here, 17b1 in the Art Scroll, in the Gemarah itself is Zion on a base. So the Gemarah over here says, the Gemarah talks here a little about the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. What's considered the boundaries of Israel concerning get, in general, the boundaries of Israel. So the Gemarah says Lememra. So seemingly from the Mishnah, it sounds like the Akul Tzvaim Eretz Yisrael. It sounds like from the Mishnah, I'm not the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda, that argues with Ameir, right? It sounds like Rabbi Yehuda and Ameir, both of them agree that Akul is the most northern part of Eretz Yisrael. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like it's pretty north in Eretz Yisrael. But I'll ask you a kind of question. So the Gemara says, I'll ask you a question. If you're saying that, I'm going to ask you a question. The question is, we have another Braisa. We have another Mishnah. It says, if one was traveling from Akko to the city of Keziv, Keziv, Akko and Keziv are both in the eastern, northern part of Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says, if you're traveling from Akko to Keziv, the Gemara over here is talking about, this Mishnah talking about, this Mishnah, this Braisa holds that Akko and Keziv, you take the line, like over here, here's Akko and this is Keziv. Right? This is Akko and this is Keziv, right? So if you travel from here to here, right? If you travel, in those days they didn't have compasses that many. Today you have a compass, right? We didn't want to talk. Let's say you're traveling from here to here, from Akri to Keziv, and you don't know what's part of Eretz Yisrael and what's part of out of Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara says, if this Mishnah says, if you look to your right, that's out of Israel. If you look to your left, that's everything in Israel. So that line, there was two cities, Akri over here, Keziv over here. If you were traveling from here to here, on your right side was out of Israel, on your left side was Israel. That means, according to this Mishnah, Kaziv is higher than Akui, so it's even more northern than Akui. And the Gemara still holds that whatever's on your right is part of, whatever your left is still part of Israel. So that means it's Akui is not the most northern place in Israel. You have Kaziv is more northern in Israel, right? So that's the Mishnah. You're traveling north from Akui to Kaziv. Miminoi, whatever on your right side, lemizrach haderech, to the east, Temeya mishum eretz amen. See, in those days, people died. They buried him wherever, whatever. They buried him, right? Died, buried him. You didn't know if the guy. You didn't know there was no markers. There was nothing. Right? You were traveling with a guy. He died. You just buried him. Traveled on. He traveled off the road. Fine. So Yidden always made a matzeva, right? By us, it was important to have a matzeva, to have a monument. And why? Because not only was it important to have a monument, we were afraid that Kehanim, we wanted to make sure that Kehanim wouldn't become Tameh. They have to know where there's a dead person, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the big problem. So if they had to make sure that if you couldn't just bury a guy on the side, then what happens is a kohen comes traveling behind you.
Right.
So you had to make if you were just going to bury a guy on the side of the road, you have to make a matzeva. So now you know that there's a kohen who's going to come down this road. He's going to see a matzeva. He's not going to go there, right? But right. Everything. So in essence, the Gemara says everything to the right is impure because you don't know who's buried there. Everything to the left, you know who's buried there is pure. So everything to the left, you don't see matzeva, is pure. You got it? So I'm traveling from Akui to Kaziv. I'm walking up this road. Everything to my right, if I'm a kohen, I better not touch, because I might become impure. Everything to my left is not a problem. So Tamei Mishum Eretz Amim is impure. It's a rabbinical thing. The rabbis said everything in the nations of the world, the land, is impure, because who knows where they buried people?
Right.
Upturim in a ma'asim shvius, and since it's out of Eretz Yisrael, you're not obligated to give truma ma'aser. You're not obligated. If there's a tree there with fruit, you can just take it off and eat it, because it's out of Eretz Yisrael. Unless someone will come and tell you, you know what, that tree is still in the boundary, because you don't know the boundary. The boundary doesn't go in a straight line. It was zigzag. I don't know. So the Gemara says this road going from Akui to Ziv, if you're traveling up this road, whatever's to your right is part of the nations of the world. Whatever's to your left is part of Israel. And everything to the left, west of the road, it's pure because it's part of Eretz Yisrael. And now it's automatically obligated in the laws of Ma'aser. Unless somebody that's professional in the borders of Israel will be traveling, it will tell you that this exact area is still not part of Israel. Ad Heichan, from where, how far north? Ad Kiziv, until the city of Kiziv, whatever, I don't know what that city is today. Whatever that city is. Ultimately, okay, and then Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, the name Rabbi Yossi, instead of the name Ad Liv until Liv, which is even more north. But ultimately, till Kaziv is surely part of Eretz Yisrael, so it's higher, it's northern than Akui. So how does Rabbi Yehuda say Akui is the most northern place of Israel when you have a Mishnah over here that says Kaziv is even further north than Israel and it's part of Israel? So the Gemara answers as follows. Amar Abai, you have to have a little imagination if you don't have the Gemara in front of you, okay? So you got to have a little imagination. Okay, I'm going to try to do justice to this, okay? If I fail, it's not the Gemara's fault.
No, it's my fault, yeah.
It's my fault. So Amar Abai, the Tzufa Nafka, that in essence, the land of Israel really ended by Akui. Here was Akui. and the land, and this was the land came till here, but there was a little strip of land that went from here to here. Little strip of land. Imagine a little strip of land. So the land ended over here, besides a little strip of land that went from Akoi to Kziv. Small road. Right. So you can imagine that it was like the from Akoi to the west there was a lot, but in Akoi suddenly the land came to a very narrow kind of ending, and there was a little part over here that went from here to here. Am I doing this justice? So you had a little part. Here was Akoi, here was Kziv, here was the boundary. So you had a very small little alley.
Right, corridor.
So and then it opened up. So you can imagine here was Akoi, here was Kziv, and it looked like this. So you had, here was the boundary to the east, to the west, and then the rest was pretty wide. I'm making my hand wide. You see that? No. So Akko is really the most northern, because it was only a little. We'll talk about a little part of the land. You got that? The Tzufa Nafka, a narrow strip of Eretz Yisrael, produced beyond the main northern boundary of Eretz Yisrael. It's a small little part, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda didn't want to put that little strip of land as part of Eretz Yisrael, as part of the subject, even though Taka did go further up. But that's what do we need to talk about this little mile by a mile, whatever. Right. So V'yev said the Gemarah, V'yev Tanasim Manach. So why would this Mishnah make a chziv? If according to Rabbi Yehuda that it's a little strip of land, and why? So why would that Tana, this previous Brisa, talk about this little strip of land between Akei and Kziv? Why would the Tana make a big deal about it? Why would the Tana itself make a big? So the Gemara says, Inkra Yavi Simana, because we find that even though it's a little strip, but it's an important thing to give a siman of this strip of land. Where do we find it? It says in a pasuk, it's written in a pasuk, and they said, this is a pasuk in the book of Judges. It says, Vayomru hine chag Hashem. They said, behold, there's a festival of God. B'shilo miyami yimina. There's a great festival from the year to year in Shiloh, which is north of Beit El and east of the road that goes from Beit El to Shechem and south to Levana. So here the pasuk says there's a big celebration in Shiloh that's north of Beth El, that is south of Levana, on a road to Shechem. We're talking about a very narrow place. And the pasuk makes a big deal about this narrow little place. And our Papa said, this verse means that Shiloh was the east of the road between Beth El and Shechem. There was a little narrow Shiloh between Beth El and Shechem, which is, these places are still next door. So there's a little narrow road, and in that narrow road, there's a big celebration. We gave a siman in the Torah on a narrow road for a big celebration. So we see that to make a siman, to make a sign of where things are, even a small road, we can give a sign to such a situation. Okay, end of that subject. Now the Gemara brings a beautiful subject. Beautiful, whole different subject. So we learned in the Mishnah that if somebody brings a get from America, from out of Eretz Yisrael, he has to say, B'fani nechta, B'fani nechta. He has to, right? In Eretz Yisrael, if he brings a get in Eretz Yisrael, or even the boundaries of what the Gemara says, from Akri to Reka, whatever, all these boundaries, in Eretz Yisrael proper, he doesn't have to say B'fanei Nechta, B'fanei Nechta. He doesn't have to say it, because in Eretz Yisrael is like everybody is united and people are all there, etc. Right? What happens? The Mishnah asks, the Gemara asks a question. Tana Chada, we have two brises. Hamevi get besfina. What happens if a guy brings a get from a ship in Eretz Yisrael? He wrote a get on a ship in the Kinneret. He wrote a get in the Kinneret. And he brought it, got off the ship, and he brought it to whatever, Tveria, which is right up the Kinneret. And he said, here the get, we wrote a get on the Kinneret, and here is the get. Does he have to say, is the Kinneret in the middle of the water as part of the land of Israel? It's a good question. So the Gemara says, Tanachava, maybe get besfida. What does brings a get? In a boat? Can maybe be Eretz Yisrael. It's like you brought an Eretz Yisrael. Wait a minute, Kinneret is part of Eretz Yisrael. So it's like on the river, right? On a lake, a big lake.
Lake, yeah.
Right, but Tani Idach. So another rabbi says, another Mishnah we learned. Can maybe no, it's not like, because you're not on the land. Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael has to be the land of Israel. You have to have 2 feet under the land. When you wrote the get, you weren't 2 feet on the land of Israel. You were on a boat. You were in the middle of a lake. A big lake. So he says, it's not. The guy who brings it from a lake, from the Kinneret, needs to say before enough. So how do you do when you have a machleket argument from two the rabbis? What do you contradiction between two mishnahs? What do you do? So the Gemara says, it's not a problem, because these two mishnahs are not the same people. Ha Rabbi Yehuda, ha Rabbanan. These two mishnahs are arguing between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. What's the argument? Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan, they don't argue about a boat. They argue about a different subject. Now, we learned in another mishnah. Afar chutz la'aretz, haba bisfina la'aretz. You take land, we bury people with the land of Israel, right? Let's say the other way around. It's the whole thing, JNF, to plant trees in Israel. What happens if I take earth from Israel, from America, and I bring it to Israel? I take a tree from America, and I bring it, a tree with fruits on it and everything, and I bring it with a boat over, and I bring it to Eretz Yisrael. I'm being on a boat to Eretz Yisrael. What happened was that the tree was I told you I put a tree that had fruits. I mean, the tree was growing, right, as it was going in the boat, right? So it came through the Haifa port of Haifa. Now it's on the port, and while it's on the port, it's growing. What would you say? You have to give Maisa for this fruit.
Yeah.
Or you don't have to give tithing for this fruit. It's still in the American pot of earth.
Right.
The earth is for
American
Israel.
Earth,
It's for America. The pot's for America. It's still in the earth of America. But now it's sitting in a boat in Israel, and it hasn't yet taken off the boat, and it's growing. Someone said you're gonna give water it. You don't want it to die. So it's growing. Now it has fruit. Do I have to give Maisa from this fruit? So the Mishnah says, the Rabbanan says, Nan offer chutz la'aretz abba b'sfino la'eretz, offer the earth of America, whatever, chutz la'aretz, whatever, and they brought over by a boat from, and it's growing on the boat, chayeves b'maiser b'shvius. You're obligated to give maiser before you took it off the boat. Rabbi Yehuda, so that's the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say you're obligated to give tithe. Rabbi Yehuda, so Rabbi Yehuda said, "Hey, Masai, when does this apply? Bizman shashvina goysheshes. Only if the boat is touching the earth. I don't know, the boat, like when it's not talking about a big liner. So when the boat comes in, and it's docked at the it's docked at the
port.
No, not more than the port. It's docked in the ground. It's not docked at the port. It's docked in the shore.
Yeah. Okay.
But if the boat is not touching the river, Ben Potter, you are Potter. Interesting machlekes.
Right.
So according to this, you would say the same thing over here. That the Yehuda, the Chachamim say it doesn't make a difference whether it's touching the earth.
Right.
It's part of Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi Yehuda says no, it has to be touching the earth. So maybe that's the machlekes in the field. He says if somebody brings a get and he wrote the get in the Kinneret, according to the Rabbanan, it's part of Eretz Yisrael. Who cares that it was written in the middle of the water? And according to Rabbi Yehuda, the boat's not touching the land. And the boat's not touching the land. It's like in midair.
Right.
That's the way the Gemarah wanted to unite the two Mishnahs. So now they get a good rabbi, but the rabbis are not happy with that because to make a machlekes between two Mishnahs between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan, you don't try to do that. So Abaye says, Amar Abaye, Rabbi Yehuda. No, Abaye says both of these Mishnahs go according to Rabbi Yehuda. How's it possible that these two Mishnahs about a get can go to Rabbi Yehuda? Lay kasha, not an argument. One Mishnah is talking about Shena Shmina Gekesheshes. One Mishnah is talking about when the boat's not touching the river, not touching the river end, not the river end, the land, right? And the other Mishnah is talking when the other Mishnah says it's not a good get. I mean, you have to say it's like a get coming from America. That the boat is not touching the ground. And the other one is talking about where the boat is touching the ground. So therefore, both Mishnahs go according to Rabbi Yehuda. And no machlekes we did do a Mishnah, not an argument to the Mishnahs. Because one Mishnah is talking about where the boat is touching the ground, and one Mishnah is talking about where the boat is not touching the ground. Amar Rab Zera. So Rab Zera says, no. Amar Rab Zera. So Rab Zera says, I'll give you another question. Otzis Nakuf. This is a general question. This is hydraulical, this question of where today we grow things hovering above the ground. Right?
Right.
So the Gemara has a question. You take a plant, a pan, what is those things called?
What?
A pot. Those pots.
Pot, yeah.
A plant pot. A plant pot, right? We have tree. It's called a plant pot. So you have that pot. If you have no hole in it, it's not connected to the ground, right?
Right.
Oh, so it's not good. What happens if you have a pot with a tree in it that has a hole? There's a hole in the bottom of the pot, but it's standing on legs, so it's not touching the earth. What is considered that tree concerning Meiser? What is considered the law concerning, what would you say is considered the law?
Oh, it's not attached.
It's not attached to the earth.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the law? You need to take Meiser, it's a tree. It's a pot with a tree in it. It's not connected to the earth. It has a hole. That's the only connection. Whatever the hole's not doing anything because it's just because it's on stilts, whatever. It's on
right.
So maybe this is machlekes in Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Rabbanan. Maybe this would be the machlekes, same machlekes. Now we have the machlekes. Would that be the same thing like a boat? According to Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbanan, what's the difference? He's hovering above the earth. That's like a boat. A boat is also hovering above the earth. There's water between the earth and the boat. So this is really the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you don't have to give meiser because it's hovering. It's not connected to the earth. According to Rabbanan, you have to give meiser because it's like a boat, like bringing a tree in a boat.
Right.
So the Gemarah says, Amar Rava, maybe not. Dilmalei, maybe perhaps not. Ad kan like Rabbi Yehuda hasa mela b'sfina. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda, when he said a tree in a boat is not connected to the ground unless it's touching the ground, maybe over there, because over there there's water. The tree is on a boat that's underwater. And when it's on the water, a soil of royach, it's in constant motion. So it's never connected to the ground. That's what he said. It has to be embedded into the ground.
Right.
The boat will be embedded in the ground. Then it's connected. But a boat on the water, it's not connected. But this pot is in one place.
Okay.
Right? So maybe Rabbi Yehuda holds. A pot that's in one place is connected to the ground, even though it's hovering above the ground. Or you can say, Inami, maybe even the rabbis would agree. A svina, the Rabbanah said before, a svina that you have a pot, a tree with a pot in it, you're obligated, is because the svina is on top of the water. And the Rabbanan hold the water is like the earth. The Maya ki dami. The water is like the earth. But over here, aval otzis, the masik avira, but over here there's nothing in between the pot and the earth. You have an empty place. You have air.
Air, yeah.
So maybe the rabbis will hold. Over here, you don't have to give meiser. So therefore you can't compare the two questions. You cannot say what Rabbi Yehuda and what the Rabbanan will hold concerning a pot that has a tree in it, even though it has a hole, but it's not touching the ground. What would be the law according to both of these sages? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Interesting conversation.
Making it more complicated here.
Oh, we're going to make it a little more complicated. Nachma Yitzchak Amaz, then comes another sage, Nachma Yitzchak, and he says, B'nahar is the Eretz Yisrael. Wait a second. I think that the Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan are not arguing about the Kinneret. Both of them agree the Kinneret is part of Eretz Yisrael. And if you wrote a get in the Kinneret, or you have a tree in the Kinneret, it's part of Eretz Yisrael. They're arguing in the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean is the boundary of Eretz Yisrael.
Right, that makes sense.
How far does that boundary go? What is the meaning that the Mediterranean is the boundary of Eretz Yisrael? How far is that boundary? How far is it? You have international waters. What's considered Israeli? I'm sure this is a problem now. What's part of Israeli waters in the Mediterranean? How far does I don't know today. How far does it go? There, and then it becomes international waters.
Right.
And they don't go doesn't go from Israel to wherever the Mediterranean ends. I don't know where it goes till. But such a big ocean, we call it Yama Gadol.
Territorial waters.
What's territorial? What's the territorial waters?
What's up?
What is the Jewish? What is the Gemara over here wants to know what is the territorial waters?
In the Gemara, I don't know what territorial waters were.
We'll soon see.
Yeah.
So the Gemara says, "Alakipili Yama Gadol." They're arguing what in the Yama Gadol, in the Mediterranean. So it's interesting they call it the Yama Gadol, the Great River. It's not like the Atlantic or the Pacific, but the Torah calls the Yama Gadol. Everything by Israel is the Yama Gadol. It's big, it's whatever. So it's big. In comparison to Atlantic and the Pacific, I think it's pretty small, but it's big.
But at that time, that was a big sea.
Yeah. It's still a big sea. It's Israel.
Yeah.
The Gemara says, "B'Yama Gadol Tanya." We learned in another Mishnah, Ezi Eretz, the Ezi Chutz Laretz. What is in the land and what is out of the land? What is considered in the Mediterranean, in and out? So you have to imagine. I'm gonna give you again. You don't have a picture. You have to imagine like a little bit like an elbow. Like you see my elbow, it's a little bit like in a curve. Okay. You have one border of Eretz Yisrael to the north, over here, and the border to the south over here. So according to this rabbi, we make a string from this to here. Whatever is in this string of the Yama Gadol is part of Israel.
I get it, like a triangle, like
a bow and arrow.
Right.
Okay,
I see it. Yeah.
So you have the north side. It's like a little bit like a bow and arrow. Right. So whatever's on the north side of Israel, which over here it's Edom, the mountains of Edom.
Right.
And whatever is the southern side of Israel, we'll soon see the Gemara will call it a name. And you take a string from here to here, and so whatever's in that string, which over here is the Yama Gadol, the Mediterranean Sea, whatever's in that string is part of Israel.
Okay.
Whatever's past that string, is out of Israel. That's according to the time we learned Ezi Eretz, which Ezi Chutz Laretz, Kol sheshefei v'yored beturi armnein ulufnim Eretz Yisrael. Anything that slopes from the peak of the mountains of Edom, which is the north. I'm sorry, that's the southern side of Eretz Yisrael. Amnon is the southern side. Mituri Amnon, and from the territory from the mountains of Amnon, which is the northern side of Eretz Yisrael. So you have Edom over here and Amnon over here. You take a mountain from this mountain to this mountain, and that's how you. Hanisim shebiyam hayaroynos, and the islands in the Mediterranean Sea are viewed kilachut mechutla aleim, as if there was a cord stretched over them. Mituri Amnon and Nachal Mitzrayim, from the mountains of Amnon to the Nachal of Mitzrayim. No, so the Nachal Mitzrayim. Minachut lifnim Eretz Yisrael, whatever, this is Nachal Mitzrayim. There was a river. Mitzrayim was the southern side of Eretz Yisrael. There was a Nachal Mitzrayim, this river that came out of Mitzrayim that went into the Mediterranean. So you stop from this Nachal until the peaks of Amnon. And you make the string, and whatever in this area is part of Eretz Yisrael. Menachut lechutz, whatever's behind this seeming string, this hidden string that we made. There's no string. It's like a native. There's only a string there. But you make the string and you evaluate what's ever there or not. That's what Rabbanan say. The Rabbanan say that's how you evaluate what is part of the Great Sea the Mediterranean is part of Israel. So it's not so much. It's a sliver. I don't know how far, a mile or two. Rabbi Yehuda Kol shekeneged Etzral. No, he says whatever as far as you can see. Whatever is, he does go straight out.
Okay.
Rabbi Yehuda Kol shekeneged Etzral like an Etzral. Whatever is in front of Israel, right? So I'm going whatever as far as I can see.
Right. All the way to Spain. Yeah.
Why? It says Gvul Yam Yilachem Yam Agadol, because it says, the pasuk says, and the western border, the great sea shall be you. You shall be as your border. The whole sea is your border. So, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the whole Mediterranean is part of the Jewish territory of the eastern border of its country. Sounds good.
Yeah. Sure, a lot of people like that.
I'm sure a lot of people like that. Right? And the border shall be from the western border. So what is so in a pasuk it says Gvul zeh yilachem gvul yam. It's a double expression. So and the Mediterranean and the Mediterranean islands at the side to the north and the south of Eretz Yisrael are viewed as through there was a cord stretched over them from the extent from California due to the west to the Atlantic Ocean. And the second cord is stretched over the extent from the Nachal Mitzrayim from till the Atlantic Ocean. He saw it as a very big, vast. Rabbi Yehuda saw it as a very big, vast. Whatever is in this area is in Eretz Yisrael. Whatever is out of all the islands from the reach out of this area are out of Eretz Yisrael. So that's the way he looked at it. He looked at Eretz Yisrael as the eastern border went pretty far. What does the Rabbi Yehuda do with this? What does the rabbis do to end this border? What does the rabbis do with the statement of the pasuk? And this border shall be. So the Gemara answers, it comes to require to teach the islands east of the mountains of Amnon. There were certain islands that were east of that mountain. He put the mountain as the eastern, as the northern border, but there were certain mountains that were east of it. So it comes to tell you that these little islands are part of Eretz Yisrael. What about these eastern islands? Wasn't he worried about these eastern islands? So he says in this letter he doesn't have to have a verse for these eastern islands, because if he says that it goes all the way out, so these islands are automatically part of Eretz Yisrael. So that's the conclusion of this topic. We'll see when Mashiach comes how far the border goes all the way to the east. Rameir Aki ke'Eretz Yisrael. Aki, Rameir says, Aki is like Eretz Yisrael. Boy, minei Rab Chia bar Abba. It's a very interesting concept, this Gemara over here, because the Gemara over here talks about Syria. Syria is Syria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Syria was not part of Eretz Yisrael until David HaMelech. David HaMelech came and conquered Syria. He made Syria part of Eretz Yisrael. So the question is, there's a very big argument in the Gemara, because it was not conquered by the Jewish nation; it was conquered by David HaMelech. So the question is, does it remain in its holiness as Eretz Yisrael if it was not conquered by the Jewish nation? It was conquered by King David HaMelech. It was not conquered by the Jewish people that came from Mitzrayim, by Yeshua with the Jewish people. So the whole argument, the question is Syria. What is the legal definition of Syria? This is the Gemara here. It's a beautiful Gemara. The Gemara says, "Hamoicha avdei l'Syria." Somebody sells his slave to Syria. Now Syria and Israel were very connected throughout history, right? From the destruction of the temple, Syria was a big place of learning for the Jewish nation. And there was a big, almost like some sages consider Syria as Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemarah does consider, you'll see in a second. So the Gemarah says, if you sell your slave, if you had a slave in Israel, or got into a non-Jewish slave, and you sold him out of Israel, he became free. He automatically got his freedom. So the Gemara says, if somebody sells a slave to Syria, is it like selling it out of Israel or not? So Amaluhu. So he told him, Tanino, we learned it in the Mishnah. Akui ke'eretz Yisrael Gittin. Akui is like the land of Israel when it comes to Gittin, it comes to divorce. Legittin in, it's only when it comes to divorce, it's like Israel. La'avadim loy, but not when it comes to slaves. So right, Rabbi Yehuda said that when it comes to divorce, Akui is like America. Right? That's the Mishnah.
Right.
Rabbi Meir says, no, Akui is like Israel when it comes to divorce. Comes this sage and says that when Meir said that Akui is like Israel, is only when it comes to Gittin. But when it comes to slaveries, it's like America. V'koshkein Surya, and for surely Surya, the Mechet Tuva, which is even further north than Akui, is like America. So he answered him. He said it's like America. There are three things that Syria is like Eretz Yisrael, and there's three things that Syria is like America. And the simon is Ayin Beis Reish Rak, Ayb Bar Rak. And what are those three things? Afara Tamei Kechutz La'aretz. The earth of Syria is impure like the earth of America. If somebody sells a slave in Syria, it's like selling it in America. If somebody brings a get from Syria, it's like bringing it from America. And Syria is compared to three things like in Israel. Chayev ben Meiser, it's amazing. Chayev ben Meiser b'shvius, it's obligated to, you have to tithe, and you have to give tithing in Syria like you have to give in Eretz Yisrael. V'areitz l'konos betara nichnas, and if somebody wants to enter into Syria in the state of purity, he can be pure in Syria like he can be pure in Israel. V'akoyde sadeh b'Syria, if somebody buys a field in Syria, he's like buying a field in Yerushalayim. Well, let's finish this off. The Gemara says, Chayev is b'maisa b'shviyas k'eretz Yisrael. It's obligated in tithing like Israel. Why? Because this Tana holds Kosava Kivush Yachid Shmei Kivush. This is what I mentioned before. That this Tana holds that even though David HaMelech conquered this by himself, he conquered Syria. He went out and took Syria as part of Eretz Yisrael. This Tana holds it's considered a part of Eretz Yisrael. It's considered a conquering, and therefore it's chayiv in Shvius. It's chayiv in the 7th year and Meiser, etc. Because it's considered part of Eretz Yisrael in these aspects. If you want to go into it in purity, you can go into it. So Gemara asks the question, you just said that its land is impure. How can you go into Syria and be pure if the land is impure? So the Gemara said, B'shida teva migdal. If you wouldn't step on the land, if you came into the land through through a box, they brought you in a box, then you could stay. Don't put your feet on the land. You go for the box into the house. So if you want to do that, you can do that. Even in America. Gemarah said, Tanya, nichnas la'eretz ha'ma'am and b'shida teva migdal. If somebody came to America in a box, Rabbi Mitama, Rabbi says it doesn't make a difference, you become impure. Rabbi Yosef says, you're pure. Rabbi says you're pure. Rabbi Yosef says you are pure. Feel it, Rabbi. Rabbi says that you're impure only if you come to America. Why? The Gazer al Gusha Valavira. Rabbi said in America the air and the earth is impure. Not only is the earth impure, the air is impure. Aval Surya, but Surya, al Gusha Gazru. Surya, they said the land is impure. Alavira, the air of Surya is still pure. Right? The land might be impure because it's Surya, but the air of Surya, with the great academies of learning, the air of Surya is like the air of Eretz Yisrael. But any place out of Surya, the air, not only the land impure, the air is impure. What it says, Akaina, does send us the Gemarah off. The Gemarah says, Akaina Sada B'Surya. Somebody buys a field in Syria, Kekaina B'Parvid Yishlaim, it's like he buys a field in Israel, in Yerushalayim. L'may hilchasa. What's important? What's the difference? So you're buying land, what's the difference? Amr Absheshes, Leimer Shekeislam Eina Afila B'Shabbos. If you're going to buy a land in Yerushalayim or from a non-Jew, you can buy it even on Shabbos. To get it out of the hands of... Get it into the hands of Jews, you're allowed to buy it on Shabbos. For the Gemarah of Shabbos, like a daitach, you can buy it on Shabbos. You can buy it on Shabbos. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. How can you say you buy it on Shabbos? Even if so, you can't buy your land on Shabbos. It's a malacha, you're not allowed to buy it on Shabbos. So what I mean, that you're allowed to have the guy sell you the land on Shabbos and let him sign all the documents. You don't do anything, and the guy does that very. Even though a guy is not allowed to do work for you on Shabbos, but to sell the land, to get the land out of the hands and put it in the hands of Jew, you're allowed to do on. You're allowed to have a guy do it to you. You're allowed to have a guy do it for you on Shabbos. Therefore, the same thing as Surya, you're allowed to have to get it into Jewish hands. So that's his even though to tell a guy to do for you work on Shabbos is a rabbinical decree, right?
Right.
But mishum yishav Eretz Yisrael goes rabbanan. But for the sake of settling the land of Israel, the rabbis didn't make this decree, and they said that even a yid's not allowed to sign documents and pay for land on Shabbos, but he's allowed to have the guy sign all the documents and do whatever he needs to do, so that it's sold, it's gotten out of his possession and brought into the Jewish person's possession. And why we do that simply? Because we're afraid the guy might change his mind, right? You wait till Sunday, he might change his mind. So therefore they said that even though it's only a decree that a guy is not allowed to do for you, a malacha is only a decree of a rabbinical decree, and therefore the rabbis didn't give a decree when we were afraid that the guy might disappear, and then you wouldn't be able to acquire the land on Shabbos. So we're not talking about selling a car or selling these things. We're talking about the land of Eretz Yisrael. That way, the rabbis didn't do a decree when it concerning the land of Eretz Yisrael. So
land transaction on Shabbat, a goy can do it.
In Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, in Israel.
In Israel, to get the land into the lands of that he sells it to a yid, it's not a problem. In America, yourself said you're not allowed to do that because there's no union, there's no concept. So the Gemarah says that Syria is not like America. In Syria, it's like Eretz Yisrael concerning the land of Syria that should stay in the land. It stayed since David Melech conquered the land. It should stay part of Eretz Yisrael. Syria should stay part of Eretz Yisrael. Which Amid Shem, Syria will be Amid Shem part of Eretz Yisrael because that's what the David Melech conquered. And when Mashiach comes, we're going to go, as we know, that the part of Eretz Yisrael goes into Syria and into it goes to the Euphrates, it goes into Iraq, it goes pretty deep.
Greater Israel.
Greater Israel goes pretty deep into Syria and Iraq and Jordan, etc., and Lebanon, etc., etc. So it was a pleasure learning with you. We're holding on Chesam and Beis, and we'll continue in Midshem next Monday. Have a wonderful, beautiful evening. Have a wonderful, beautiful evening. It was a pleasure learning with everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.